University of Vermont Extension and the Vermont Tourism Research Center. Today we're talking about accepting SNAP and EBT, and we're specifically focused on direct market farmers. With food insecurity on the rise and more Vermonters taking advantage of SNAP and EBT, and also some uncertainty in the way that farmers markets are working, it's become more important that farms who are willing to accept SNAP and EBT are set up and ready to do that. The process takes some time, and it is somewhat involved, but we're very lucky to have with us today Jenny Porter and Emmett Mosley, both from the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont. They are experts in this area, and they can walk you through it and help you get started. Before I turn it over to them, I do have a question for you. I just want to see who is here with us. And oops, I'm attempting to launch a poll. There we go. Okay, now let's see if I can launch the poll. All right, you should see on your screen a poll that says, describe yourself, check all that apply. We just want to get even though people did register, we never know who's actually going to show up. So it's helpful for us to get a sense right at the beginning of who is here. So I apologize for those of you who aren't with us and who aren't with us by video and you're calling in. But for those of us who are, just take a moment to click whether you're a farmer, service provider, nonprofit, government agency, educator, or other. And if you do type in other, please type into, if you do click other, please type into the chat and let us know who you are, as long as you're feeling comfortable sharing. I'm now going to end the polling, and I'm going to let you know what we found. It looks like we're 53% farmers, little over half. We've got 28% extension and service providers, 31% nonprofits, 6% government, 13% educators, and then we have a few others joining us. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm going to stop with the results and stop sharing my screen, and now turn it over to Emmett and Jenny.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for turning out here. My name is Emmett Mosley, and I work for the Northeast Organic Farming Association. I'm the Community Food Access Programs Coordinator, which means working on a variety of programs which combine access to locally grown food for low-income Vermonters in a way that helps farm viability. So that includes a crop cash incentive program for increasing people's SNAP purchasing power at farmers markets, the farm share program, where we work with farmers to raise funds to provide 50% subsidy for CSA shares, and the senior farm share program, which provides CSA shares for seniors directly where they live. So today we're going to be talking about SNAP and EBT, and that's pretty integral to the functioning of all of these programs. So it's pretty important to NOFA's food access work. I should just remind you that at NOFA, we do not administer the SNAP program. We do our best to keep in touch and keep up to date with the state folks who actually are in charge of administering the program, and the federal agencies that really provide all the fundings for it. So I just want to put that as a slight caveat here. I'll let my co-worker, colleague, Jenny Porter, introduce herself as well.
I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jenny.
Cool. Hi, folks. I'm Jenny Porter. I'm the Market Development Manager at NOFA. So I work with Emmett on our food access programming, as well as some more general support to direct markets and farmers markets. And I've been working on food access at direct markets at NOFA for the last few years. and I will be kind of monitoring the chat box while Emmett presents. So we're going to kind of tag team this presentation, so I can answer some questions in the chat box, or I'll field the questions to Emmett as I see appropriate. And some of them I might wait a little bit because I know that he'll be answering later in the presentation. So if I don't answer your question right away or present it to Emmett, that's probably why. All right, take it away, Emmett.
All right, excellent. Okay, so I just want to do a little overview of what's going to be in this presentation before we get going, in case anybody signed up for something else, just to make sure that it's relevant for everybody. So the first thing is that this is pretty Vermont specific. You know, SNAP is a federal program, but all the states kind of get to tweak the rules of how they administer the program. This information is pretty specific to Vermont. So if you're calling in from a different state, some of these local contexts might vary. Specifically, what we're talking about today is how to become a SNAP retailer if you are a direct market farmer. So it's pretty similar to, but not exactly the same as the process for farmers markets. We have a lot of information for that in our farmers market legal toolkit. So if you're a farmers market manager, there's a lot more specific information for that there. So we're talking specifically about people who do CSAs, farm stands, and these sort of novel curbside delivery operations that are kind of popping up for everybody because of the COVID outbreak. So we're going to talk about sort of how to get, who qualifies to be a SNAP retailer. We're going to talk about the process for applying and being approved. We're going to talk about the different types of equipment that are out there for farmers who become SNAP retailers, and some funding options for those, specifically funding through the state of Vermont. And we're going to talk about the process for processing SNAP in manual voucher form, in case your equipment is not functioning. So if that's not what you're interested in learning about, you can jump off the train now. But otherwise, we'll get started here. All right, so just to define a few terms before we get going. I'm going to be using the term mostly SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And it's really a catch-all term for a federal food program that allows people to shop directly at food outlets. EBT is the actual card that somebody would swipe, and that's the thing that carries their SNAP benefits. So it's used very similarly to a debit card, with a few notable exceptions that we'll get to. But EBT is the actual card itself. And every state has a different name for this program. In Vermont, we call it 3 Squares Vermont. But mostly I'll be using SNAP and EBT. So as Lisa mentioned, you know, why should direct market farmers become SNAP authorized retailers now? As I'm sure most folks know, there is a huge uptick in unemployment of a sort of historic level, and also a pretty large increase in SNAP participation. So people who weren't eligible before are suddenly becoming eligible for the first time. And also people are getting more benefits than they had in the past. People actually have more money to spend in their SNAP benefits, which means it's sort of an opportunity to expand your market, and people in that market will have more purchasing power than they've had in the past. Another thing is, if you've been following NOFA's work, in-person farmers markets, sort of the traditional farmers markets, face a pretty uncertain future right now for 2020. It's really unclear what exactly the guidelines will be, how much social distancing is going to sort of maintain throughout the course of the market season. And we're seeing certain markets decide not to go forward with a sort of in-person market season at all. Others may follow. And farmers markets are really pretty critical for people who use SNAP in 3 Squares Vermont as a way to directly access local food. And it's also a way that a lot of farmers up to this point have been able to serve SNAP customers. Like one market would have their own machine, and that means that any person selling at that market would sort of have access to that machine. As markets close or their opening dates are delayed, farmers are losing access to that opportunity to process those sales. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of farms pivot to doing more direct-to-consumer sales, sort of on a farm-by-farm basis. which hopefully will replace a significant percentage of the lost sales due to restaurant closures and farmers markets sort of operating in a limited fashion. So in order to sort of access the market of people using SNAP benefits, each individual farm now has to be a SNAP certified retailer. So, and finally, we're able to leverage these federal programs that have incentives for SNAP shoppers to sort of increase their purchasing power. It's called Crop Cash here in Vermont. And CSA farmers and farm stands can participate in those programs, but in order to be part of those and to sort of get those increased sales, you have to first become a SNAP retailer. So when we talk about direct market farms, the USDA's definition is up here on the slide, which is just a farmer producer that sells their own agricultural products directly to the general public. So you can imagine that CSAs, farm stands, and now folks who are doing direct-to-consumer curbside pickup and delivery sales. The one group that doesn't really apply to here is farm stands that sort of aggregate and resell products from other farms. So they would apply as sort of as stores rather than as direct market farms. You can still be authorized to become a SNAP retailer, but it's not exactly the same. So what are the requirements to be a SNAP authorized retailer? Most farmers, if you're selling staple food products, so that's fruits, vegetables, grains, meats, and dairy products, would qualify pretty easily through this 50% rule. You can see on the left-hand side of the slide, which basically just means that 50% of your sales comes out of those staple food products. So, your typical CSA or small-scale meat or dairy producer, that's most of your sales is coming out of those staple food products. So if you're not selling a lot of things that are, say, maybe CBD or tinctures or things like that, it's fairly, you can be fairly confident that you're going to be approved, as a SNAP retailer, that the foods that you're selling are going to qualify you here. So, other considerations to think about before you decide to go through with the process of applying to be a SNAP retailer is that SNAP and EBT transactions have to be done in the presence of an employee. So I know a lot of people right now are interested in online sales and whether or not EBT cards and SNAP benefits can be processed over the phone or online. Currently, that is not an option. We've been in touch with our state representatives and they have passed these questions up the chain, and it doesn't seem that anytime soon that's going to change here in Vermont. There's some pilots going on in some other states, but those are only really happening with really large retailers like Walmart and Amazon, unfortunately. So really at the moment, all SNAP transactions have got to be done in person. So that means that if you've got a farm stand, that means your farm stand has to be staffed in order to accept SNAP benefits. You can't do any self-service SNAP processing. The other consideration to think of is that, particularly for CSA farmers, is that you can't pay more than 14 days in advance. So that means you couldn't use your SNAP benefits to sign up and pay the full balance of your CSA share. So farmers, who want to sell to this market, kind of need to think about tweaking their process a little bit and maybe establishing a payment plan system so that people could pay, twice a month or at each pickup for their plan. The other thing to consider is that you can't charge state or local taxes on SNAP purchases. Most food products don't have sales tax on them anyway, so it's not usually a huge concern. All right, moving on. So sort of as I touched on before, if you're new to this, SNAP is really meant to purchase staple food products that people are going to prepare and eat at home, with a couple of small exceptions. So this puts most direct market farms in a pretty good position because, most of you are selling sort of the raw ingredients for people to cook with. However, just so that you know, folks cannot buy beer, wine, or alcoholic beverages, tobacco products, vitamins and supplements, or non-food items, like pet food or herbal solves or things like that. So as long as you're sticking to just the basic staple food products, you should be in good shape. So once you've sort of thought through all those to make sure and sort of come to the determination that it's a good idea for you to apply to become a SNAP retailer, it's sort of a two-step process at the beginning. So first you have to sort of register with an account with the USDA. And I know I've had a few questions from people who have gotten a little confused at this point. And you actually have to register as a customer of the USDA in order to do that. So that's what the little screenshot there is showing you. So once you get through that, that's just a quick 2-minute thing. Then you can begin the process of actually applying to be a SNAP retailer. And when you start this application again, it can be a little confusing since these systems are built for all SNAP retailers and not just farmers. Some of the language can be a little confusing. You are going to select the option of a store application. Rather, in the same screen, there's a farmer's market, which you may be tempted to click at, but you're not going to do that. You're actually a store for this consideration. So, all right. And then this is the sort of before you get into the full process, you're going to want to collect all of these documents that are showing here on the screen. Apologies to anybody who's calling in. But it is a fair amount of documentation that they want to see. And currently all of this is only being accepted online. In the past you could have the option of actually mailing in copies of all of this, but because of the COVID pandemic, they're not accepting any physical documents. They're all going to be uploaded online. So you need to gather all this stuff and then find access to a scanner somewhere so that you can scan it all in. But most small businesses should have copies of all this stuff. The main thing is that if you have a different person who's sort of managing your SNAP sales versus the person who owns the farm, and that person is going to turn over a lot, you really want to make sure that the people who actually own the farm have their names and social security numbers and personal identifiable information on there, because if there's a lot of turnover in the position of the person, then you're going to have problems sort of getting access to your account later on. So once you get through this whole process, once you've gathered all the documents and gone through, you can probably do all this in about 45 minutes to an hour. You are going to have to wait for at a minimum, or at least up to 45 days before the Federal Nutrition Service, is going to give you an approval. So, and during that point, anytime during that process, they can call you to sort of ask you for clarifying information. While that's happening, you can log back in using that first login that you created to sort of check on the status of your application, or you can call this number. It's a toll-free number that you can call if you have questions. So once you are approved as a SNAP retailer, then
Emmett, can I jump in? We have a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a question about the application process that I'll read out. They asked, if the information is for the farm owners, can someone else still do the application and create the username?
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, it's just something, when you're first logging in, you're just going to want to make sure that's an email address, that that more than one person has access to. Because if you make it under your own personal email, if you're not the business owner, then it's always going to be connected to you. So, you could even create like a farm, NOFA farm email address, so that you could share it around for people. So that, because that's the username that you're going to need in order to keep looking back on your application. So
great, thank you. And does anyone else have any questions about the application process before we move into talking about EBT equipment options? You can either type them in the chat box or unmute yourself if you're on the phone. All right, we got some more. The farm I'm applying for is one business, but has 2 locations. So I assume the question is, can the EBT machine be used at both locations? Which I can answer this quickly. That's a good question. In the last farm bill, there was a new rule made that there used to be a rule that one EBT machine could be used at one location only. And we ran into problems with this with farmers markets that hosted 2 separate locations. It seemed like a really silly rule. So the last farm bill, that rule was changed. However, there hasn't been any guidance issued around it. So we're still not sure if you're technically allowed to do it yet. I mean, it's kind of an unclear legal question right now, but I would say if you're one business with 2 locations, getting authorized once is fine. And then I think you're fine using your machine at 2 locations. Other folks are asking anything else critical to have in advance. I would say that, I mean, Emmett, correct me if I'm wrong, but just that list of paperwork is all you need.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty extensive. I mean, it may be something that you're going to have to call your accountants, to collect. So it's something worth putting in the time to really gather all that stuff before you start, just so that you can sit down and do it all in one sitting. Because until everything is submitted, your application isn't going to be reviewed. So, and then it's 45 days from that point.
Yep. Somebody else said they're confused about providing a business license.
Could they be more specific? I mean, it's basically, anytime that you register as a business with the state, at least in Vermont, you would sort of, you would register with the Secretary of State to sort of register your business name and license. So it's not really like it's just the information that you have on file with the Secretary of State's office. You should be able to access that online.
Yeah. Similarly, somebody asked about how nonprofits register. I don't know the answer to that one. I think just maybe, with your registration with the state.
Yeah, I mean, there's as you're clicking through the application process, there's a whole different section that when you select nonprofit, it will sort of direct you to some new questions. It's a little tricky for us because we haven't actually been able to sit down and do the full application because it requires, like a social security number or EIN. So, if I would encourage folks, if you're really, stuck, I mean, we can sort of work through it with you a little bit, but, really those questions should probably go to the SNAP retailer hotline, the number which is up on the screen right now.
Yeah. Okay. Some other folks said, we've worked with WIC to do farm to family coupons. Can we do both? Yes, you can accept SNAP and do farm to family. Both great. Somebody asked if you can sell CSA shares through SNAP. Yes. And as mentioned earlier, you just can't, SNAP cannot be used to purchase food more than 2 weeks out. So they would kind of have to make like a payment plan, monthly payment plan. And we can help you think through that if you have specific questions. Somebody asked if you weren't open last year, can you use figures from the previous years? I don't know. I'd ask the SNAP retailer hotline.
Yeah, I'm assuming that it would be the last year that you were in business, basically. I mean, really, they just want to make sure that your, the bulk of what you actually sell is staple food products. So I think 2 years old data would be fine.
Yep. And then a couple more I'll just run through quickly. We have an orchard, but we're not open year round. Can we still use SNAP or accept SNAP? Yes, you can. You don't have to be open year round. You just have to make SNAP available any times you are open. Is this advisable for farms that are at farmers markets that currently accept SNAP? That's up to you. I think if your market accepts SNAP, you don't need to accept SNAP at the market necessarily, but if you want to be able to do on-farm sales with SNAP, then definitely get certified or authorized.
Right.
Oh boy, more coming in. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, and just to follow up with that is that we're really just encouraging folks to do this now, partly because it takes a while. It's totally free to apply and be approved, and you have 5 years before you need to renew your sort of status. So basically, I mean, what I think everybody's realizing is that, the season is going to be really unpredictable this year. So we're just encouraging folks to do this now so that they're somewhat ahead of the curve. And if you decide that it makes sense, partway through the season, if markets don't end up opening or if people don't end up coming out to them, that you have this as an option. So, I mean, it's really up to you after that point.
Totally. Somebody else asked if they're not organic. SNAP is not tied to organic at all. You don't need to be certified organic at all. And then somebody repeat what I said about WIC. You can accept farm to family WIC coupons in addition to SNAP benefits. They're totally separate. They're not linked to each other at all. So you can do both. Okay, and then one more, and then we'll move on to equipment option. Our farm has a kitchen and makes a lot of prepared meals. Are these sales included in determining the 50% staple foods requirement? Emmett.
So yeah, that they would be. However, you can actually, I mean, if you think about people shopping with their SNAP benefits in a grocery store, you're buying like a frozen meal. You can use it to buy a frozen burrito. You can use it to buy sushi. You can use it to buy a salad or a cold sandwich. The only thing in terms of prepared foods that you can't use it to purchase is hot food that's meant to be eaten on site. So, I mean, if your farm has like a burger night where you're selling burgers to the public that, they're meant to eat right there, those wouldn't qualify. And those would sort of be considered non-staple food items. But if most of what you're doing is, making prepared meals that are meant to be like reheated and eaten at home, or even just not hot when you sell them to people, then those would be SNAP eligible and those would count towards your 50% staple sales rule. So, correct me if I'm wrong there, Jenny.
No, you can definitely purchase those prepackaged meals as long as they're not hot, like you said, and meant to be eaten on site. Yeah. Okay, so should we move on to equipment for the sake of time?
Sure. So the reason that we went through all that sort of preamble before we got to the equipment is because for all of these programs, you need to already be a SNAP authorized retailer to even apply for the funding. So there's a couple of different funding options that fund different programs, but in order to even fill out the application, you need to already be an approved retailer. So this is definitely something to think about for how you want it to work. But before you go through the process of trying to apply for any of this equipment, you need to get to be an approved retailer beforehand. So
can I add a little bit of a preface too?
Sure.
I just thought of something that might not be obvious to everyone is that once you become SNAP authorized to accept SNAP benefits, you can't just use normal like credit card machines to process SNAP benefits and EBT cards. Wish you could, because that would make life really simple and food would be way more accessible to a lot of folks. Unfortunately, because of the like federal nature of this benefits program and the nature of the federal government being a little bit slow on the uptake of technology, you have to have a special EBT equipment to accept those payments. And so that's what Emmett's gonna talk about is the different options for getting that equipment.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I sort of forgot about that. Because the EBT card looks like a debit card or a credit card, I think some people think that you can process them with regular equipment. Sadly, that is not the case. There are systems like this one through Novodia that can process all types of transactions. So they can process Snap, they can process credit cards and debit cards as well. And there's a link here to a program that you can apply for a free year's worth of service. The program is called MarketLink, but the actual system that you'll be using is called Total Pay, and that's by Novodia. So it's, it's a system that can work either as a standalone terminal, or you can use a smartphone or tablet that's got an internet connection or a wireless data program. So if you've ever used Square, it's very similar to that. So you can get a year's worth of free funding, no commitment, see if it works for you, and then decide if it's worth the approximately $30 a month that it would cost to keep going. So I'd say it's a really good option for people who aren't really sure, but it is really convenient now if you're doing, if you're doing deliveries and someone using Snap wants to, purchase your product and have it delivered to their home. You can bring the actual card swiper with you, and then that way you can still process the card person to person, which is a requirement of the federal rules right now. So you can sort of learn more about that at marketlink.org. And they're actually having a webinar about this tomorrow, about this program. We will make sure we send out the link to the actual webinar, but you can find out more information at marketlink.org. So that's a national program. It doesn't have anything to do, regardless of what state you're in, you can apply for that funding. So starting just this month in April 2020, the state of Vermont has released some pass-through federal funds, and that will help producers purchase wireless EBT only equipment. So that's for farmers markets or direct market farmers to use. So as we stated before, this equipment can only be used to process EBT and SNAP benefits. You can't use it to run credit card and debit card transactions. And it's a reimbursement-based program. So you would pay, the subscription amount up front. You would purchase the equipment that you would need, whether that's a standalone card reader through FIS or Conduit, or if you want to use the smartphone-based system, you would pre-purchase the little card swiper, but you would use your own phone or tablet, and then the state of Vermont can reimburse your expenses through July 2021, which is a little inconvenient because it's right in the middle of market season. But as part of this program, you're allowed to pre-purchase funds for an extra year of service. So as long as you pay for them and submit your request for reimbursement before July 2021, you could go for an extra year of service. So there's a lot of sort of detailed breakdowns of how all the different equipment providers work, and all of the application process is at the website on the bottom of the slide. For folks on the phone, we're going to make sure all these slides are available online through UVM and through NOFA. So you'll be able to see all these links if you're interested in learning more about that. And then finally, I think this is actually a great option for a lot of direct market farmers, is landline-based EBT only equipment. So these are what you would see at most retail stores. And the state of Vermont provides them completely free of charge. They have no per transaction costs. They have no subscription cost. So in that sense, it's really, really safe. The only limitation here is that in order to actually swipe a card and process a transaction, they have to be plugged into a regular phone outlet. So I think for a lot of CSAs, this could still work since people are mostly coming to your location, and you can process the transactions there. But it can be a little trickier for people who are maybe doing deliveries or if your CSA has multiple pickup locations, it's a little trickier. But it's still a really great option for people, and it's totally risk-free. So you can see the website to learn more about how to get that is ebtedge.com. And that's run through the state of Vermont. And you can contact them directly to learn a little bit more about that. So the other thing that, the other option you have, even if all you have is a sort of, plug-in landline-based machine, is that you can run manual vouchers. And really, has to be an option for all of your, no matter what equipment you're using. If you're going to be a SNAP retailer, you really need to know how to use manual vouchers, because in the event that your phone battery dies or your card swiper isn't working, or you're in a area where you have no data or cell connection, you can use a manual voucher to process an EBT transaction. And basically what that is, you can see a picture of it here on the screen, is that you take down all the information that is on a person's card, and then you call the SNAP retailer, the Vermont SNAP retailer help desk, and basically say, Jenny Porter's here and she wants to buy $50 worth of vegetables, and here's her card number. And what they do is they basically place a hold on her account, so that she can't then go and spend that $50 on something else. And then they give you an authorization number that you write in. So then you can, hand Jenny her vegetables. She can go on her way. Within 15 days, you either call that same number back to clear that voucher. So that's why you need that authorization number.
Emmett, can I just correct you there? I
Yeah,
think you
go ahead.
misspoke. You don't call the number to clear the voucher. You have to clear the voucher on the machine, or online.
Right. Yes. Thanks, Jenny.
No
so
problem.
you cleared out your machine and basically manually enter in all the information. And then you're going to need to enter in that authorization number that they gave you online, or on the phone, excuse me. Or you can go to ebtedge.com and process that transaction online that way. But you have 15 days to do it. Otherwise, Jenny's $50 gets released back to her card, and you don't get that money, and your vegetables are long gone. So, this is actually a pretty good workaround though for a lot of folks, that, if you're not doing a huge number of transactions and you're sort of willing to go through this process, that you can get your free landline-based machine, and then, for your customers that want to do SNAP, you just do these manual vouchers, and you don't have to worry about any subscription fees or, bringing any equipment with you, or anything like that. So, you still do have to do all this in person, face to face, but it's a good option for sort of lower volume, people who are doing lower volumes of SNAP transactions.
I have a question in the chat related to that.
Yes.
Somebody asked if you can process a SNAP charge without the card present, like an over the phone sale. And that, I have a couple answers to. First, you legally cannot ask for a customer's PIN number over the phone. So somebody couldn't call you with their number, their card number and their PIN, and you would type it into the machine like you can a credit or debit card or a credit card. However, this manual voucher system, we've seen farms get creative with in a few different ways, and especially around CSA payments. And one thing we've seen folks do is have the customer complete multiple manual vouchers. Say they were trying to set up a payment plan for their CSAs so that they would process their card once a month, kind of like predating checks, and you would give them the checks to cash once a month. You can have them complete in person the voucher, and then give it to you, but predate them, and then you hold on to them, and then on an agreed upon date, you call the hotline and place a hold on their account and then clear the voucher, kind of. So that's a little bit of a workaround to doing the phone payment. That there is risk with that system, in that if you need to accept the risk that if they, for whatever reason, lose their benefits or don't have money in their account on the day you go to authorize it, that you can get some other form of payment from them. So there's a little bit of a risk in that system, but we have seen farms do that workaround. If somebody asked if the retailer help desk is staffed on weekends, and I don't know that answer, but I would assume not, because USDA likes to make our life difficult sometimes. Oh, they say it's an automated system. Oh, for the manual vouchers, it's an automated, yeah, to call in an authorization, it's a manual automated system. But to get help like with your application, it's not automated. Somebody asked if clear the voucher means have the payment go through. Yes, yeah, yes. That is what we mean. And I'm looking for any other questions. The manual voucher thing is a little bit confusing, and we have, we created a document that has these different equipment options, and then a document with the manual voucher process for you. And one other thing I'll add about the manual voucher process is every company, every like machine company has a different way of clearing the vouchers. So you would need to get the instructions directly from your company. The one that we are most familiar with and is easiest is the FIS like the wired free machines through the state, because the state has a really good relationship with that company. We were able to get really clear instructions from them. And those you actually can clear on a website, which is super easy, a lot easier than doing it on the machine. So we have even seen, this is another interesting point, we've even seen farms who don't have a landline phone, so technically can never actually run their wired free machine, but still process vouchers and clear them on the website. So it feels silly that they still need to even have the physical machine to do this, but they do. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you don't have a landline but want that free equipment option. All right. Somebody asked where you get the manual vouchers. Also a great question.
Yeah, yeah, we have them on NOFA's website to print, basically. And you can see in the picture, you've got this number. That's why the voucher number section in the top right corner is blank. You basically number those like checks, so that each one has a unique number. But yeah, it's a little funky.
Yes, I didn't know that took us a while to learn. We thought that you had to like order special vouchers from the company, and we were having a hard time getting them, and then you would have to pay for them. And then we realized that you don't have to do that. You can create your own and create your own voucher number. It just needs a unique identifying number so you could like track it.
All right, great. So I guess if there's no more questions, we're pretty much at the end of our discussion here, but we would love to hear from you. If you go through this process and get certified, if you have feedback along the way, because of the COVID pandemic and because of just different bureaucratic structures, these things are kind of constantly in flux. And it's really you guys who are going to go through the full process. So, if you want to pass along information about how it worked for you, how you got your questions answered, if anything we told you here didn't quite pan out like you thought it would, we would love to hear from you. And we'd also love to know if you're accepting SNAP, just so that we can update your information on our online CSA and farm stand directories, so that customers who are looking for places to be able to shop with their SNAP benefits can find you through our website. And then also, just finally, we'd like to we put a little plug in for our matching programs, which leverage federal funds to basically double the purchasing power of people using SNAP. So it's sort of a win-win. The customer gets to buy more for their money, and then you get to do more sales. So once you've all been approved and you've got a staffed farm stand, then you can think about participating in that program. And similarly, if you're a CSA farm and you work with our farm share program, we're able to sort of leverage some of those same funds so that NOFA can then spread our dollars out. We can leverage federal funds for our commitment to the farm share program, and then spread those funds out to people who don't have SNAP. So, so once you're on board with all this equipment, then there's even more ways that you can increase access to lower income folks through your farm stand or other types of direct marketing activities. And
got some more questions in the chat box.
Sure.
One of them says, do you have any recommendations on what to do while waiting for the authorization process? My farm stand opens May 7th. Unfortunately, there's really no way to speed up the process.
Yeah, and we've sort of had conversations with our contacts in the state, and to sort of see if FNS is fast tracking people's applications right now. And we've heard multiple times that they are definitely not. So, you know, it's unfortunate. I mean, I guess if you're interested in just letting people in the area know, you could put up a little sign that just says, like, you know, we hope to be able to accept SNAP benefits by, you know, say mid-June or something like that, just so that people don't come once and think it's not a place that they can use their SNAP benefits. But yeah, there's not really a way that you can start taking any payments before you're fully authorized, sadly.
Yeah. Somebody else asked, can we have limited EBT processing times so that we don't have to staff the farm stand all the time? That's kind of a tricky question, because legally, if you accept SNAP benefits, you're supposed to always accept them. Like, if you're accepting any form of payment, you need to accept SNAP too. You cannot discriminate against SNAP shoppers by limiting their payment times while not limiting other people's payments times. It's a little bit, I feel like, tricky around this staffing part, but all I can say is, like, that's the legal answer, is that no, you're not supposed to ever discriminate payment types, which makes it really, really tricky or almost impossible for farm stands that aren't staffed to do that. One thing we have seen as a workaround to that is some farm stands kind of run like a CSA farm stand hybrid model, where you can, like, pre-purchase credit to the farm stand. And so you could accept SNAP payment every couple weeks for credit to your farm stand. If that makes sense. Happy to talk more with folks about the details of that. We've just seen some folks get creative. We've got more questions. Is the 50% discount only for fruits and veggies, or does it include dairy and meat? The 50% discount.
Yeah. So, I mean, dairy and meat are SNAP eligible products, but thanks for asking that, because the incentive programs are really fruit and veggie incentive programs. So, so you could still take SNAP payments for meat and dairy, but the crop cash program is just to subsidize fruit and vegetables. So those wouldn't be eligible for the 50% discount.
Somebody asked the landline, a question about landlines, meaning not Verizon Wireless, even though there's a line to the Orchard store. I'm not totally clear on that, but when we say landline, we mean like the kind that you have to, like, plug into the wall with, like, the old school kind of phone. So I don't, like, the dial-up kind of thing. I don't know if the Verizon Wireless line counts as that. And then somebody else wants more clarification on the distinction between applying as a direct market farmer rather than as a farm store. What is the ratio between your own products and partner products?
Oof. Yeah, that is a good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm tempted to say that if you're reselling anybody else's stuff, then you would not be considered a direct market farm. So, I mean, I suppose that in that case, you could potentially apply as a direct market farmer, but then just the other farms' products would not be SNAP eligible in your store, if that makes sense. But I don't know, maybe Jenny knows more about that. That's a little bit of a niche distinction?
I don't have the answer to that, but I would recommend calling the SNAP retailer line about that. Somebody asked if there's specific signage required to be displayed at the farm, like saying that you accept SNAP benefits. I don't know if it's required. I think that like those kinds of rules you would, like if you get authorized, they'll send you materials with kind of like, here are all the legal rules as a SNAP authorized retailer that you should definitely read through to understand, because this is a federal program and they do take fraud quite seriously. Although I would say that you would want to display a sign to advertise to your customers, because that's great marketing for you. I'm trying to, let's see if there's any more questions. Oh, somebody just kind of summarized. So they say, so to summarize, apply with USDA, wait at least 45 days, apply to the state to get a free landline machine, even though I don't have a landline, block funds by online form, then manually fill out vouchers, clear them online at night. How long till payment gets issued? So I'm going to make a couple corrections to that. So you would apply to USDA. You would wait at most 45 days to hear. Then you would apply to the state to get your free landline machine. And that goes through pretty quickly. And then you would block funds on somebody's account with a manual voucher, and you would call a hotline to do that, not online. Then you would clear the voucher online at night, and the payments usually go through within 2 to 3 business days once you've cleared them. Do they give you signs? I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. Don't know the answer to that one. Voucher hotline is open on weekends. Yes, it is. It's automated. Keep the questions coming, folks. These are great questions.
Yeah, and again, just for folks who are calling in on the phone, there's a bunch of links to documents that explain these processes in more detail for manual vouchers, for all the different EBT equipment funding operations or options that are out there that are here on the last slide. They're mostly on NOFA's website. Also, another plug for the Farmers Market Legal Toolkit. There's a lot of good information in there just about SNAP in general. So that's a great resource too. That's all free online as well.
Well, thanks so much, Jenny and Emmett. We're almost at the end of the time, but I would say, I know sometimes it takes a little while for people to formulate questions, so I would say feel free to keep sending in your questions through chat. And if there is anyone who is on the phone and wants to chime in verbally with a question, you can hit *6 to unmute yourself and jump in, because we have a couple minutes. We did have one question which asked, where will this slideshow be available? We're going to post it on the UVM website, which I'll send out in an email to all of you. And actually, Emmett, I'll also send out whatever links Emmett and Jenny send to me. So I don't know if you're also going to post this slideshow on a NOFA website or anything like that.
That's a great idea. We will do that.
Yep. Yeah, there's a page of sort of SNAP resources on NOFA's website. So it will go up there. It'll be in the same spot where you can find the EBT equipment information and the manual vouchers that you can print out. It's nofavt.org/3squaresVT with the number 3. All
right. Well, Emmett, if you don't mind stopping your share for a moment,
Sure.
Then I could share my screen.
There we go.
All right. I just want to, let's see. Just want to close by letting people know what's coming up. So we've got We've been doing these weekly. When we started this a few weeks ago, we weren't quite sure what interest would be like. I know it's, the middle of the day, kind of lunchtime, sometimes not. But as the growing season progresses, we're expecting people are going to be outside and, maybe not wanting to come inside for one of these online conversations. But as long as folks are interested in coming out, we'll keep providing these. So next week, back to the Wednesday at noon, next week we've got meat and dairy direct sales, and Jen Colby from the pasture program with UVM Extension Center for Sustainable Agriculture is going to be leading that. And that's a little more focused on navigating regulations for licenses and for selling other people's products related to meat and dairy. Then the following week on May 6th, again at 12 noon, 1 hour, we are planning ahead for safely selling local food at farm stands and CSAs during COVID-19. May 6th feels like a world away, but so we don't know exactly what the guidelines and regulations will be like by then. But we're planning ahead with what we know now and also showcasing what some of the enterprising farms are currently doing. So we'll have Ashlyn Bristle from Rebot Farm down in Brattleboro. They're selling milk, meat, and products from other farms as well. And they have a meat CSA. And we'll have Sarah Armstrong Donegan from Trillium Hill Farm up in and she's also with the Intervale Center. And they've got a bunch of products at their farm stand, and for quite a few weeks now, they've been doing no contact farm stand sales where people order in advance and then go through on Saturdays and pick up what they've ordered. We'll have Alyssa Matthews from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture with us. So we don't know what the guidelines will be by May 6th, but whatever they are, we'll be happy to share them with you, and we'll also share, more general best practices during this time. We're always looking for more ideas, and we've got some others in the works, such as looking at food access. Food access and food justice. It's becoming a bigger issue as more and more people are needing help with food insecurity. I'm going to close by putting one more poll up for those who are with us on video. You should be able to see a poll that asks how you want to get information about farming markets and distributing Vermont food in the time of COVID-19. Possible options, and you can click as many as you want, are to continue these online conversations like today. We've got two more scheduled. Maybe we'll have a third or fourth. It sort of depends on the feedback we get and how many people keep showing up. Other options are podcasts, Facebook, email, websites, phone conversations, printed materials. And then we just have the other category where if you do type in the other, or even if you don't type in the other, feel free to put your thoughts into the chat. We'd love to, we're doing this because we want to hear from you about what works best and how we can help out. So let us know your thoughts by chat, or you can always email me at lisa.chase@uvm.edu. I'm now going to share the results of that poll. Looks like we had about 72% saying to continue with these online conversations. 16% opted for the podcast. No one said Facebook. 84% said email. Well, that's good because I'll follow up in the next day or two with an email with the links that Jenny and Emmett shared, as well as their contact info and other resources. About a third, 32% said website. Then we've got 8% saying phone conversations, 12% saying printed materials, and just 1 for the other. Well, we're now at the hour, and that's a long time to be sitting in front of our computers, and I know many of you would rather be doing anything but be in front of your computers. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. I especially want to thank Jenny and Emmett for sharing with us all that information about SNAP and EBT, and we will stay in touch by email.